Falcon Shock's truck performance system for the Toyota Tundra will increase the overall stability, comfort, and control when driving on and off-road. The optional tow-haul shocks will reduce rear-end sway when towing or hauling. Raise the vehicle off the ground and remove the wheels and tires. We show the installation on the driver or left side of the vehicle, but the steps for the other side are the same. Detach the ABS line and brake line bracket from the knuckle. Disconnect the steering by removing the cotter pin and then the nut. If the stud on the ball joint won't release, strike the knuckle with a hammer to loosen it. Disconnect the upper control arm ball joint from the knuckle. Remove the cotter pin and loosen the nut. Use a hammer and strike the knuckle to loosen the ball joint stud. Remove the bolt connecting the sway bar link to the A-arm on both sides. Then move the sway bar up and out of the way. Remove the hardware connecting the lower shock eyelet to the A-arm. In the center, between the two outer studs, mark the strut tower, isolator, and spring before removing the coilover assembly from the tower. Remove the 4 upper nuts and remove the assembly from the vehicle. Before installing the front Falcon shocks, you will need to determine the desired ride height. The shocks for the Tundra have 4 options: stock, medium, level, and heavy accessory. The shocks are preset to level. This setting will level out the rake in the front end and eliminate the need for leveling spacers. Stock will make the vehicle ride at the stock ride height. Medium puts the ride height between stock and level. The heavy accessory setting is designed for those with heavy bumpers, winches, or other accessories. This setting will maintain a level ride height even with increased front end load. After the ride height has been determined, have a qualified mechanic separate the spring from the original shock and install the spring onto the Falcon shock body. Be sure the grease zerk aligns with the marks made earlier. This will make the zerk face out towards the tire. Place the front bump stop onto the shaft with the wide end towards the top. Apply anti-seize and run the shaft nut on, then remove the shock from the compressor. Torque the nut to 40 foot-pounds. We found the best way to torque this nut is to use a 19mm crowfoot wrench on the nut and keep the shaft from spinning with an 8mm wrench. With the grease zerk facing the wheel, install the upper studs into the strut tower. Set the lower eyelet into place and use the factory hardware. Reconnect the sway bar link to the A-arm. Reconnect the steering. Tighten the castle nut. Insert the pin into the hole on the stud. If the gap in the castle nut and the hole in the stud don't align, tighten the nut until they do. Always tighten a little more, never back the nut off. Reattach the upper control arm to the knuckle by pushing down with a pry bar. Feed the nut onto the ball joint. You may need to tighten a little bit further to allow installation of the cotter pin. Reinstall the ABS and brake line bracket. Falcon shocks for the Tundra are available in a Sport or a Sport tow haul option, while the front shocks remain the same for both kits. The rear shocks for the Sport tow haul feature a 3-position fast adjust knob that allows you to select from one of the 3 options: Comfort and Control, Moderate tow haul, or Heavy tow haul. Install the roost guard onto the rear Falcon shocks. Tighten the nut to 30 inch-pounds. Remove the rear factory shocks from the vehicle. Take the bushing from the factory shock and reuse it on the Falcon shock. Install the upper stud of the rear Falcon shock and loosely install the nut. On the driver's side, the shock reservoir points to the rear of the vehicle, and on the passenger side, it points to the front. Support the rear axle and set the lower eyelet into the shock bracket. Orient the roost guards away from the axle. Use the factory hardware and torque to 74 foot-pounds. Return to the top and torque this nut to 15 foot-pounds. The reservoir should not make any contact with the edge of the shock bucket. With the axle supported, loosen the nuts on the U-bolts. Remove the factory bump stop. Set the Falcon bump stop mount into place and place the U-bolts over the tabs. Tighten the U-bolts down, make sure it's done evenly. Using a silicone-based lubricant, install the bump stop by pushing down while twisting. Install the provided bracket extension using the factory hardware on the axle end and the provided bolt and nut on the bracket end. Do the same for the bracket on the other side. The third extension attaches to the bracket to the left of the rear differential. Again, use the factory hardware on the axle end and the provided bolt and nut on the bracket end.